Laura Koenig posted her final Instagram story from Damascus International Airport at 11:47 p.m. on March 15th, a shaky video of her boarding pass with the caption, "Finally meeting my soulmate. Dreams do come true," while 28-year-old Karim Haddad waited in the arrivals hall, planning exactly how he would isolate, control, and ultimately destroy the 31-year-old German physiotherapist who believed she was flying to Syria for her own fairy tale wedding. The Leipzig native had spent 8 months building what she thought was the love story of a lifetime with a charming Syrian entrepreneur who claimed to own a construction company rebuilding war-torn Aleppo. In reality, Karim was an unemployed manipulator with a history of violence who had perfected the art of luring vulnerable Western women into his web of control and abuse. What began as romantic messages about destiny and soulmates would end 90 days later with Laura's name in international headlines, not as a bride living her dream, but as another victim of a predator who turned women's hopes for love into instruments of their own destruction. Laura believed she was traveling to Syria to marry a man who saw her as his salvation. Instead, she became trapped with a monster who saw her as his possession, her passport as his leverage, and her isolation as his advantage. Her story reveals how quickly paradise can become prison when trust meets manipulation and hope encounters calculated evil. The case of Laura Koenig shocked authorities not only because of its brutality, but because of how systematically Karim had orchestrated every detail, from the initial contact to the final tragedy. For him, Laura was never a person to be loved, but a target to be hunted, captured, and broken. In an age where digital romance promises connection across any distance, Laura's story serves as a chilling reminder that the most dangerous predators don't lurk in dark alleys. They hide behind profile pictures and love songs, using our deepest desires for connection as weapons against us. Laura Koenig sat in her small Leipzig apartment on a rainy February evening, scrolling through social media while the world outside seemed to mock her solitude. At 31, she had built a successful career as a physiotherapist at a rehabilitation clinic, owned a cozy apartment in the city center, and maintained a circle of friendly colleagues, yet she felt invisible, as if life was happening around her rather than to her. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated facade of positivity. Sunrise, photos with motivational quotes, pictures of healthy meals, snapshots from solo weekend trips to nearby towns. But behind the hashtags like "living my best life" and "independent woman" lay a growing desperation that she was missing out on something fundamental. Another engagement announcement, she muttered to herself as she saw her colleague Sarah's post featuring a diamond ring and a beaming couple. Sarah was 26, 5 years younger than Laura, and now the 4th woman in Laura's social circle to get engaged in the past year. Laura's mother called during her evening routine, as she did every Tuesday. "How was work today, sweetheart?" "Fine," Laura replied, the standard answer that avoided deeper conversations about her increasing isolation. "Are you eating properly? You looked thin in your last photo." "I'm fine, Mom." Her mother, Ingrid, worried constantly about Laura's single status. After a bitter divorce from Laura's father when Laura was 16, Ingrid had thrown herself into work and never remarried. She seemed to live vicariously through Laura's potential for happiness, while simultaneously fearing that Laura might be following the same lonely path. "Maybe you should try one of those dating apps," Ingrid suggested gently. "Times have changed. People meet online now." Laura had tried dating apps, but Leipzig's dating pool felt shallow and repetitive. The men her age were either recently divorced with complicated custody arrangements, commitment-phobic Peter Pans, or carrying emotional baggage that made her own insecurities seem minor by comparison. Her work as a physiotherapist was fulfilling in many ways. She helped stroke patients regain mobility, guided accident victims through painful recovery processes, and witnessed daily miracles of human resilience. But the constant exposure to human fragility made her acutely aware of how precious time was, and how much of hers felt wasted on an unfulfilling romantic life. "I want to matter to someone," she confided to her closest friend Emma during one of their monthly coffee dates. "I want someone who sees me and thinks, there's the woman I want to build a life with." Emma, married with 2 young children, tried to be supportive but couldn't hide her exhaustion with Laura's romantic pessimism. "You're putting too much pressure on finding the one," she said. Maybe focus on being happy with yourself first. But Laura didn't want to be happy alone anymore. She wanted the partnership, the shared dreams, the sense of belonging to something bigger than herself. At 31, she felt like she was running out of time for the family she'd always imagined having. Her Instagram posts became increasingly focused on wanderlust and romantic idealism. She shared quotes about love transcending borders, posts about couples who met across continents, articles about women who found love in unexpected places. Her bio read, "Believer in second chances, true love, and following your heart wherever it leads." It was this digital vulnerability, this public display of romantic longing, that made Laura the perfect target for someone scanning European women's profiles for signs of emotional need and financial stability. The first message arrived on a Tuesday evening in late February, just as Laura was settling into another night of Netflix and herbal tea. "Hello, beautiful soul," it read, sent to her Instagram DM from an account called @KarimDamascusDreams. "I saw your posts about believing in love without borders and felt I had to reach out. Your words touched something deep in my heart. I'm Karim, from Syria. I hope you don't mind a stranger writing to you, but sometimes the universe puts people in our path for a reason." The profile photo showed a handsome man with dark eyes and a gentle smile, wearing what looked like a well-tailored jacket. His other photos showed him at construction sites, posing with building plans and sharing meals with family members. The bio read, "Syrian entrepreneur rebuilding dreams from the ashes, believer in love, hope, and second chances." Laura normally ignored messages from strangers, especially men from other countries. But something about Karim's message felt different. It wasn't crude or obviously fake like most DMs she received. He had referenced her actual posts, used thoughtful language, and his profile looked legitimate. She decided to respond. "Thank you for your kind words. Syria must be a beautiful country despite everything it has been through. What kind of work do you do there?" The conversation that followed would change everything, and cost Laura far more than she could ever have imagined. "Do you think a successful, intelligent woman like Laura would be too smart to fall for an online predator's manipulation? Stay with us, because this story reveals how skilled predators exploit our deepest human needs for connection and belonging. Subscribe now for more shocking true crime documentaries that show how quickly dreams can become nightmares when hope meets calculated evil." Karim's response came quickly, beginning what would become an 8-month campaign of psychological seduction that would gradually rewrite Laura's understanding of love, risk, and reality. "I own a construction company here in Damascus," he wrote back. "We specialize in rebuilding homes and businesses destroyed by the war. It's heartbreaking work, but also hopeful. We're literally rebuilding lives and futures. Syria was indeed beautiful before the conflict, and it will be again. I believe in restoration, in second chances, in healing what has been broken." Laura was moved by his sense of purpose. Here was a man who had suffered through unimaginable circumstances, yet remained focused on healing and rebuilding. It felt meaningful in a way that small talk with Leipzig accountants and marketing managers never had. Over the following weeks, their conversations deepened with remarkable speed. Karim shared stories about his family, his dreams for Syria's future, and his philosophy about love transcending all boundaries. He asked thoughtful questions about her work, her patience, her hopes for the future. "You must have such a beautiful heart to dedicate your life to helping others heal," he wrote after she described her work with stroke patients. "I can see why you became a physiotherapist. You understand that broken things can be made whole again with patience and love." Within a month, they had moved to video calls. Karim appeared exactly as his photos had suggested, handsome, articulate, with an earnestness that made Laura feel seen in ways she hadn't experienced before. His English was excellent, flavored with a slight accent that she found charming. "I must confess something," he said during their third video call, his dark eyes looking directly into the camera with unusual intensity. "I have never felt such an immediate connection with anyone. I know we have only just met, but I feel like I have been waiting my whole life to find you." Laura's heart raced. No one had ever spoken to her with such romantic directness. "I feel it too," she admitted. "It's crazy, but it feels like we're meant to know each other." "Not crazy at all," Karim replied. "When two souls recognize each other, distance becomes irrelevant. Geography is just an obstacle that true love overcomes. He was a master of love bombing, the psychological technique of overwhelming targets with intense affection and grand romantic gestures. Every conversation included passionate declarations of destiny, soulmate connections, and a future that seemed both inevitable and magical. "I dream about you every night," he told her after 6 weeks of daily communication. "I see us walking through the ancient streets of Damascus together. I see you in my family's home, laughing with my sisters. I see us building something beautiful together, not just a relationship, but a life that combines your healing spirit with my rebuilding work." Laura's friends and family began to notice changes in her behavior. She was distracted at work, constantly checking her phone and declining social invitations to be available for Karim's calls. "You're glowing," Emma observed during one of their coffee dates. "What's got you so happy?" "I've met someone," Laura said, unable to suppress her smile. "Someone very special. Local guy. How did you meet?" Laura hesitated. "He's international. We met online." Emma's expression shifted to concern. "How international?" "He's Syrian," Laura said, immediately defensive. "Before you say anything, he's a successful businessman. He owns a construction company, and he's helping rebuild his country." "Laura," Emma said carefully, "I'm just going to ask, have you met him in person?" "Not yet, but we video chat every day. I know him better than I've known most men. I've dated for months." Emma's skepticism was obvious, but Laura didn't want to hear it. She was tired of her friend's practical concerns interfering with the first romance that had made her feel truly alive in years. Karim sensed when to escalate the relationship. After 3 months of daily communication, he began talking about marriage. "I know this might sound premature to Western standards," he said during a late-night video call. "But in my culture, when a man knows he has found his life partner, he doesn't waste time with games. Laura, I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife, my partner, in rebuilding not just Syria, but our future together." Laura was overwhelmed with emotion. "Karim, this is all happening so fast." "Love doesn't operate on schedules," he replied. "When you know, you know. The question is whether you feel what I feel, that we were meant to find each other." "I do feel it," she whispered. "But marriage, moving to Syria, it's such a huge step." "I understand your fears," Karim said gently. "Come visit first. Meet my family. See the life I want to share with you. If you don't feel at home here, if you don't see our future as clearly as I do, then you can return to Germany with no obligation." The idea was both terrifying and thrilling. Laura had never done anything so spontaneous, so romantic, so completely outside her careful, controlled life. "My family is planning a celebration next month," Karim continued, "a wedding for my cousin. It would be the perfect time for you to visit, to see Syrian culture, to meet everyone who would become your new family. What do you say, my love? Will you take this leap of faith with me?" Laura stared at her reflection in the computer screen, seeing herself through Karim's eyes, not as a lonely physiotherapist approaching her mid-30s, but as a brave woman about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Yes, I'll come." Karim's smile was radiant. "You have just made me the happiest man in the world," he said. "I promise you, Laura, this decision will change both our lives forever." He was right about that, but not in any way Laura could have imagined. The 3 weeks leading up to Laura's departure were a whirlwind of preparation, excitement, and increasingly desperate attempts by her loved ones to change her mind. "You're flying to Syria to meet a man you've never physically been in the same room with?" her mother Ingrid said during what became a series of increasingly tense phone conversations. "Laura, please listen to yourself. This isn't romantic, it's dangerous." "Mom, you don't understand," Laura replied, packing her suitcase while balancing the phone on her shoulder. "Karim isn't some random internet stranger. We've been talking for months. I know his family, his work, his dreams. I know him better than I knew most of my previous boyfriends." "You know what he's told you," Ingrid corrected. "That's not the same thing." Emma was even more direct in her opposition. "I've done some research on Syria," she said, placing printouts on Laura's coffee table during an intervention-style visit. "The country is still unstable. There are areas controlled by different factions. Tourism is virtually non-existent. Why would a successful businessman be looking for a wife online instead of locally? Laura pushed the papers away without looking at them. Because he's looking for someone who shares his values, someone educated and caring. Not every Syrian woman has had the opportunities I've had. Laura, listen to yourself, Emma pleaded. You're rationalizing everything. This man could be anyone. He could be married already. He could be involved in criminal activities. You could be walking into a trap. But Laura had already mentally committed to the journey. Karim had been sending her daily updates about the wedding preparations, photos of his family cooking traditional dishes, videos of Damascus markets where they would shop together. The reality he painted was so vivid and inviting that Emma's warnings felt like jealous pessimism. At work, Laura's colleagues were divided between excitement and concern. Her supervisor, Dr. Mueller, called her into his office for a private conversation. I understand you're taking extended leave to travel to Syria, he said carefully. I want to make sure you've thought this through completely. The political situation there is still very unstable. Karim assures me that Damascus is safe, Laura replied. His family has been there throughout the entire conflict. Dr. Mueller nodded slowly. Just promise me you'll stay in contact. Check in regularly. And remember that your position here will be waiting for you when you return. The assumption that she would return hadn't been part of Laura's planning. Karim had been increasingly suggesting that she might want to stay longer, perhaps permanently. Once you see the life we could build together, he had said during their last video call before her departure. I think you'll realize that Leipzig was just preparing you for your real life here with me. Laura's final Instagram post before departure showed her passport and boarding pass. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to rewrite your entire story. Syria, here I come. Follow your heart. New beginnings. Love conquers all. The flight from Leipzig to Damascus via Istanbul felt like a passage between worlds. Laura had never traveled alone to a developing country, never ventured somewhere she couldn't easily communicate in her native language, never made a decision based purely on emotional impulse rather than careful planning. As the plane descended toward Damascus International Airport, Laura felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Through the small window, she could see a landscape that looked nothing like the Germany she knew. Ancient and modern buildings mixed together, mountains in the distance, a sense of history and complexity she had only glimpsed in Karim's photos. The airport was chaotic and overwhelming. Laura's German passport drew attention from security officials who questioned her purpose for visiting. She explained that she was attending a wedding, visiting a friend, staying for 2 weeks. They stamped her passport with what felt like reluctance. In the arrivals hall, Laura scanned the crowd for Karim's familiar face. When she finally spotted him, holding a sign with her name, she felt a rush of relief and recognition. He looked exactly as he had in their video calls, tall, handsome, with that gentle smile she had fallen in love with. "Laura!" he called out, walking toward her with open arms. "My beautiful queen, you made it." His embrace was stronger and more possessive than she had expected. He held her for a long time, speaking in Arabic to people around them, showing her off like a prize he had won. "Welcome to your new home," he whispered in her ear. "Now our real life begins." Laura smiled, but something in his tone made her feel less like a welcomed guest and more like acquired property. The drive through Damascus was both fascinating and unsettling. Karim pointed out landmarks, explained historical significance, and described his plans for showing her the city. But he also immediately began establishing new rules. "You should not go anywhere without me," he said as they navigated busy streets. "Damascus is safe, but it's not like Germany. Women here do not walk around alone, especially foreign women." Laura nodded, assuming this was cultural sensitivity rather than control. "And you should be careful about using your phone in public," he continued. "People might think you are a journalist or spy. It's better to let me handle all communication while you're here." These seemed like reasonable precautions to Laura, who had no experience with the cultural norms of her new environment. She was completely dependent on Karim's guidance, which was exactly what he had intended. The apartment where he took her was not the comfortable family home she had imagined from their conversations. It was a small, sparsely furnished flat in a neighborhood that looked nothing like the Damascus of his video calls. "This is temporary," Karim explained, seeing her confusion. "My family home is being renovated for the wedding. We'll have our privacy here while we get to know each other in person." Laura's phone had no signal in the apartment. When she mentioned this, Karim said the building had poor reception, but he would help her get a local SIM card soon. As night fell and Laura realized she was completely alone with a man she had never actually met before this day, in a country where she knew no one else and couldn't speak the language, the first whispers of doubt began to creep into her mind. But by then, it was already too late. Laura's first full day in Syria shattered the romantic illusions that had sustained her through 8 months of digital courtship. She woke up in the sparse apartment to find Karim gone, with no explanation of where he had went or when he would return. Her phone still had no signal. She tried connecting to Wi-Fi networks, but found them all password protected. The apartment had no landline. For the first time since arriving, Laura felt truly isolated and vulnerable. When Karim returned in the afternoon, his demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the gentle, romantic man from their video calls. He seemed irritated by her very presence. "Why are you sitting around doing nothing?" he asked, seeing her reading a book by the window. "I was waiting for you," Laura replied, confused by his tone. "You didn't tell me where you were going?" "I don't need to explain my movements to you," he said sharply. "This is my country, my home. You are the guest here." Laura felt stung by his sudden coldness. "Of course, I just thought we would spend the day together, getting to know each other in person." Karim softened slightly, perhaps realizing his mask had slipped too quickly. "I'm sorry, my love. I had business to attend to. The construction company requires my constant attention." But Laura hadn't seen any evidence of a construction company. Karim had no office phone calls, no business meetings, no employees or clients contacting him. When she gently asked about his work, he became evasive. "Syrian business is complicated," he said. "Much of it is done through personal relationships and informal agreements. You wouldn't understand the culture." The promised meeting with his family never materialized. Every day brought new excuses. They were busy preparing for the wedding, they were traveling, they were dealing with family emergencies. Laura began to wonder if his large, welcoming family existed at all. Meanwhile, Karim's behavior became increasingly controlling. He accompanied her everywhere, even to the small grocery store around the corner. He held her passport for safekeeping and promised to help her get a local SIM card when he had time. "In Syria, women don't go places alone," he explained when Laura asked to explore the neighborhood by herself. "It would be disrespectful to me and dangerous for you." Laura's attempts to contact her friends and family in Germany became increasingly difficult. The apartment's Wi-Fi was unreliable, and Karim always seemed to have urgent matters to attend to whenever she asked to use his phone. After 5 days, she managed to send a brief message to Emma using Karim's phone while he was in the bathroom. "Arrived safely. Everything wonderful. No phone service yet, but will call soon." The message was a lie designed to prevent worry, but it masked Laura's growing unease about her situation. The wedding celebration that was supposed to be the highlight of her visit kept being postponed. First it was delayed by family illness, then by venue problems, then by unspecified political situations. "Syrian celebrations are not like German parties," Karim explained when Laura expressed disappointment. "They happen when the time is right, not according to artificial schedules." By the end of her first week, Laura hadn't met a single member of Karim's family or attended any social gathering. She had seen nothing of Damascus beyond the route between the apartment and a few local shops. She had no independent means of communication or transportation. When she tentatively suggested that perhaps she should return to Germany as planned and they could continue their relationship long distance, Karim's reaction was explosive. "You want to leave?" he shouted, his face contorting with rage. "After I welcomed you into my home, into my life, you want to abandon everything?" Laura was shocked by his sudden anger. "I'm not abandoning anything. I just thought maybe this is moving too fast. Maybe we need more time to." "Time?" Karim's voice rose. "I have given you everything. I have opened my heart, my home, my future to you, and you talk about leaving?" His rage was so sudden and intense that Laura instinctively backed away from him. For the first time, she felt physically afraid. "Karim, please calm down. I'm just trying to understand what's happening here. This isn't what we discussed. I haven't met your family. There's been no wedding celebration. I can't even contact my own family." "Your family?" he sneered. "What family? The mother who doesn't understand you? The friends who tried to prevent you from coming here? I am your family now. This is your home now." Laura realized with growing horror that Karim's vision of their future involved her complete dependence on him. He didn't want a partner. He wanted possession. "I want my passport back," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your passport is safe," Karim replied, his anger suddenly replaced by cold calculation. "But you don't need it right now. You're not going anywhere until you understand what it means to be here with me." That night, Laura heard the apartment door lock from the outside. When she tried to open it the next morning, she discovered she was trapped. Karim returned in the evening with groceries and acted as if nothing had changed. "I had to secure the apartment," he explained casually. "There have been break-ins in the neighborhood. It's for your safety." But Laura knew better. She wasn't being protected. She was being imprisoned. The romantic adventure she had imagined had become a nightmare of isolation and control. And she was beginning to realize that Karim had never intended for her to leave Syria alive. 3 weeks into what was supposed to be a 2-week visit, Laura's situation had deteriorated from concerning to desperate. The apartment had become her prison, with Karim controlling every aspect of her existence. When she ate, when she slept, when she was allowed to leave the single room. Her attempts to reason with him had only escalated his volatile behavior. One morning, when she asked again about contacting her family, Karim grabbed her roughly by the shoulders. "Stop talking about Germany," he shouted, his face inches from hers. "There is no Germany for you anymore. There is only here, only me, only the life I choose to give you." Laura tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "You're hurting me," she said. "I'll hurt you much worse if you keep defying me," he replied. And Laura saw something genuinely dangerous in his eyes. The physical violence began subtly. A painful grip on her arm when she asked uncomfortable questions. A shove when she didn't move quickly enough to suit him. Karim tested her boundaries systematically, escalating the abuse while gauging her responses. "This is your fault," he would say after each incident. "You make me angry with your ungrateful behavior. I brought you here to love you, but you keep pushing me away." Laura found herself walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate his moods and avoid triggering his rage. She realized with growing horror that this was exactly where he wanted her, completely focused on managing his emotions rather than planning her escape. Her phone remained confiscated, her passport locked away somewhere she couldn't find. She had no money, no contacts, no understanding of how to navigate Syrian bureaucracy or law enforcement. She was entirely dependent on a man who saw her as his property rather than a human being. The few times Karim allowed her outside the apartment, it was only while he maintained complete control. He would hold her arm tightly, speak for her in all interactions, and make it clear to anyone they encountered that she belonged to him. "My German wife," he would introduce her, though they had never actually married. "She is still learning our ways." Laura tried to make eye contact with other women they passed, hoping to communicate her distress without words. But Syrian women in their neighborhood seemed to avoid looking directly at foreign women, and Laura couldn't tell if this was cultural norm or recognition of her dangerous situation. The promised wedding celebration was revealed to be complete fiction. When Laura pressed him about it, Karim laughed coldly. "There was never any wedding," he said. "That was just what I needed to tell you to get you here. You wanted romance, you wanted adventure. I gave you the story you needed to hear." Laura felt sick as she realized the extent of his deception. "Everything you told me was a lie?" "Everything was necessary," he corrected. "You would never have come here for the truth. Women like you only respond to fantasy." "What is the truth?" Laura asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Karim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The truth is that you are here now, and you belong to me. The truth is that your precious German life is over. The truth is that you will do exactly what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it, for as long as I decide to keep you." Laura's last desperate hope was that someone would come looking for her. Her leave from work was supposed to end soon, and surely her absence would be noticed. But Karim had anticipated this concern. "I've been sending messages to your family and friends using your phone," he revealed during one of his cruelest moments. "They think you're having a wonderful time and have decided to extend your stay indefinitely." Laura's heart sank as she realized he had been impersonating her, maintaining the illusion that she was safe and happy while isolating her completely from any potential rescue. "What do you want from me?" she asked during one of their increasingly frequent confrontations. "I want you to accept reality," Karim replied. I want you to stop fantasizing about rescue or escape. I want you to understand that you have two choices. Be grateful for what I give you, or suffer the consequences of continued resistance." Laura began to understand that she was not Karim's first victim. His methods were too systematic, too practiced. He knew exactly how to isolate someone, how to break down their resistance, how to make them completely dependent on his mercy. When she asked him about other women he had contacted online, his expression became dangerous. "There have been others," he admitted, "but they didn't appreciate what I offered them. They made the mistake of thinking they could leave whenever they wanted." "What happened to them?" Laura whispered. Karim's smile was terrifying. "They learned that some decisions cannot be undone." That night, Laura lay awake planning her escape. She knew she had one chance to save herself, but it would require more courage than she had ever needed before. She also knew that if she failed, she might not survive the consequences. Laura's opportunity came 6 weeks into her captivity, during one of Karim's increasingly frequent absences from the apartment. He had become careless about locking the interior bedroom door, apparently confident that she was sufficiently broken and isolated to attempt escape. While searching desperately through his belongings, Laura found her passport hidden in a drawer, along with several other European passports, French, Italian, and Swedish documents belonging to women she had never seen. Her blood ran cold as she realized she was part of a pattern, not an isolated victim. She also discovered a second phone that Karim had been using to maintain multiple online relationships. The device contained conversations with at least 12 different women in various European countries, all following identical scripts of romantic manipulation and promises of Syrian marriage. One conversation particularly horrified her, messages with a French woman named Sophie who had apparently visited Syria 8 months earlier. The conversation thread ended abruptly with Sophie promising to trust Karim completely and follow his guidance in everything. Laura photographed everything she could with Karim's hidden phone, including the other passports and the evidence of his systematic deception. If she managed to escape, this evidence might help authorities find other victims and prevent future crimes. Her escape plan was desperate but simple. She had noticed that the building's front door was occasionally left propped open during morning deliveries. If she could time her departure perfectly, she might be able to reach the street before anyone noticed her absence. Laura had no money and spoke no Arabic, but she had memorized the location of the German embassy from studying Karim's Damascus city map. It was a long walk through unfamiliar streets, but it was her only hope. On a Thursday morning, after watching Karim leave for what he claimed was a business meeting, Laura put her plan into action. She dressed in the most conservative clothing she had, covered her hair with a scarf, and slipped out of the apartment. The walk to the embassy took nearly 3 hours. Laura was terrified that every person who looked at her might recognize her as Karim's property and force her to return. She tried to walk confidently while fighting panic attacks and the constant fear that Karim might appear behind her at any moment. The German embassy was her salvation. When she stumbled through the doors and collapsed in the reception area, sobbing and speaking rapidly in German, the staff immediately recognized an emergency situation. "Please help me," she said to the first German official she saw. "I'm being held captive. He has my passport. There are other women. Please don't let him find me." Within hours, Laura was under embassy protection, while German diplomatic officials worked with Syrian authorities to investigate her claims. The evidence she had photographed was immediately turned over to international law enforcement agencies. The search for Karim began immediately, but he had disappeared from his apartment, along with all evidence of his crime. Laura's testimony and the photographs she had taken were the only proof of his systematic targeting of European women. The other passports she had discovered led to international missing person investigations. Sophie, the French woman, was found to have vanished in Damascus with no trace. The Swedish woman had been reported missing 6 months earlier. The Italian passport belonged to a woman whose family had been searching for her for over a year. Laura's rescue made international headlines. German woman escapes Syrian captor after 6-week ordeal. The story shocked readers around the world and prompted warnings about the dangers of international online romance. But for Laura, the headlines were just the beginning of a much longer journey toward healing and justice. Laura's return to Germany was both a rescue and a trauma. The physiotherapist who had left Leipzig as a hopeful romantic returned as a survivor of systematic psychological and physical abuse, carrying not only her own wounds but evidence of crimes against multiple victims. The German Federal Police immediately opened an international investigation based on Laura's testimony and the evidence she had smuggled out of Damascus. Interpol issued warrants for Karim Haddad, though investigators suspected this was likely another false identity. "What you experienced was not romance gone wrong," explained Detective Inspector Sarah Weiss, who specialized in international crimes against women. "This was a predatory operation. Karim targeted you specifically because your online presence indicated vulnerability, financial independence, and isolation from strong social networks." Laura learned that she had been selected from hundreds of potential victims based on algorithmic analysis of her social media posts. The romantic quotes, travel aspirations, and expressions of loneliness had created a digital profile that screamed, "Ideal target to experienced predators." Your Instagram posts about seeking adventure and believing in love without borders essentially advertised your availability to men like Karim, Detective Weiss explained. These criminals have sophisticated methods for identifying women who are emotionally and geographically vulnerable. The investigation revealed that Laura's captor had been operating similar schemes for at least 3 years. Bank records showed money transfers from multiple European women, always preceded by months of romantic manipulation and followed by the women's disappearances. "We believe there are at least 15 victims across Europe," Detective Weiss told Laura during one of their extensive debriefing sessions. "Some may still be alive and captive. Others," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Laura's survivor guilt was overwhelming. While she had escaped, other women remained trapped, or worse. The Swedish passport she had found belonged to Anna Lindqvist, a 28-year-old teacher whose parents had been searching for her for 8 months. "I should have tried to find them," Laura said during one of her therapy sessions. "I should have looked for other victims while I was there." "You were focused on survival," her therapist, Dr. Elizabeth Korn, reminded her. "You cannot save others if you cannot save yourself. Your escape and the evidence you provided may be the key to helping those other women." The international investigation expanded rapidly. European authorities discovered that Karim's network extended across multiple countries, with accomplices in Turkey, Lebanon, and Germany who helped facilitate the trafficking of women. Laura learned that she had been extraordinarily lucky. Most victims of this particular network were never seen again after arriving in Syria. Her successful escape was attributed to a combination of her professional medical training, which had taught her to remain calm under extreme stress, and Karim's overconfidence in his control over her. "He made a crucial error," Detective Weiss explained. "He underestimated your intelligence and determination. Most victims become so psychologically broken that they stop looking for escape opportunities. Your medical background taught you to observe, document, and act decisively in crisis situations." The media attention surrounding Laura's case brought both support and unwanted scrutiny. While her story helped raise awareness about international romance scams, she also faced victim blaming from online commenters who questioned her judgment in traveling to Syria alone. "How could an educated woman fall for such an obvious scam?" was a common refrain in comment sections. "She brought this on herself by being so naive." These responses devastated Laura more than she expected. "Maybe they're right," she told Dr. Korn. "Maybe I was incredibly stupid to trust him. Intelligence has nothing to do with vulnerability to emotional manipulation." Korn replied firmly. "These predators are experts at exploiting universal human needs for love and belonging. Your education and profession did not make you immune to sophisticated psychological manipulation. In fact, your compassionate nature as a healthcare provider may have made you more susceptible to his apparent vulnerability and need." Laura's recovery process was complicated by her isolation from normal social connections. Her friends and family, while supportive, couldn't truly understand what she had experienced. Her work colleagues treated her with a mixture of sympathy and uncomfortable curiosity. She felt like a living cautionary tale rather than a person rebuilding her life. 6 months after her return, Laura received news that would change her perspective on her ordeal entirely. Syrian authorities, working with international investigators, had rescued 4 European women from a compound outside Damascus. The rescue operation had been based entirely on information Laura had provided about Karim's network and methods. Among the rescued women was Anna Lindqvist, the Swedish teacher whose passport Laura had found. Anna had been held captive for 10 months and had been repeatedly told that her family had stopped looking for her. "You saved my life," Anna told Laura during an emotional video call arranged by investigators. "If you hadn't escaped and provided that evidence, I would have died in that place." The rescue operation had also uncovered the remains of at least 6 other women, all Europeans who had been lured to Syria through online romance scams. Laura's escape and testimony had not only saved her own life, but had provided justice for multiple murder victims and rescued other women from ongoing captivity. The trial of Karim Haddad's network took place 2 years after Laura's escape, in a special international court established to prosecute transnational crimes. Karim himself remained at large, but 8 of his accomplices were captured and prosecuted. Laura testified via video link, recounting her experience in detailed testimony that took 3 days to complete. She described the systematic nature of the deception, the gradual escalation of control, and the evidence she had discovered of multiple victims. The defendant and his co-conspirators operated what can only be described as a murder factory. The prosecutor stated during closing arguments, "They identified vulnerable women, lured them with false promises of love, and then systematically destroyed them." Laura Koenig's courage in escaping and providing evidence has prevented countless future victims. 7 of the 8 defendants were convicted of kidnapping, human trafficking, and accessory to murder. They received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years in prison. The verdicts were front-page news across Europe, highlighting the growing danger of international romance scams that escalate to serious violent crimes. Laura's role in exposing the network made her an inadvertent advocate for other victims. She began working with international law enforcement agencies to help identify and rescue women trapped in similar situations. "I realized that my experience, as horrible as it was, gave me unique insight into how these operations work," Laura explained during her first public speaking engagement at a conference on international crime. "I understand the psychological manipulation techniques because I lived through them. I can help other women recognize the warning signs before it's too late." Her advocacy work became a central part of her healing process. Laura established a foundation that provided support for survivors of international trafficking and worked to educate women about the sophisticated techniques used by modern predators. "The old image of trafficking victims as uneducated women from poor backgrounds is completely false," she told audiences around Europe. "These criminals specifically target intelligent, successful women because we have resources worth stealing and we're more likely to travel internationally without raising suspicions." Laura's foundation developed educational materials that were distributed through embassies, universities, and social media platforms. The materials focused on recognizing love-bombing techniques, understanding the warning signs of predatory behavior, and maintaining safety when pursuing international relationships. "Real love develops slowly and respects boundaries," became one of her key messages. "If someone claims to love you intensely within weeks of meeting online, if they pressure you to make major life changes quickly, if they try to isolate you from friends and family, these are not signs of passion, they are signs of predation." Anna Lindqvist, the Swedish woman rescued partly due to Laura's evidence, became a close friend and co-advocate. Together, they testified before the European Parliament about the need for stronger international cooperation in combating romance scam networks. "These are not individual criminals working alone," Anna testified. "These are sophisticated international organizations with the resources and connections to operate across multiple countries. Fighting them requires equally sophisticated international cooperation." The Parliament subsequently passed stronger legislation requiring social media companies to implement better verification systems and to cooperate more fully with international law enforcement investigating transnational crimes. Laura never returned to her old job as a physiotherapist. Her new work as an advocate and educator became her full-time profession. She wrote a book about her experience that became an international bestseller, with proceeds going to support other trafficking survivors. "I lost the life I planned to have," she wrote in the book's conclusion, "but I found a purpose I never could have imagined. My suffering was transformed into a weapon against the people who caused it. That transformation doesn't justify what happened to me, but it gives meaning to my survival." Today, 5 years after her escape from Syria, Laura Koenig continues her work as an international advocate for trafficking survivors. Her foundation has helped identify and rescue over 30 women from similar situations, and her educational programs are used by law enforcement agencies worldwide. Karim Haddad was never captured, despite international manhunts and a significant reward for information leading to his arrest. Intelligence agencies believe he has assumed a new identity and continues to operate romance scam networks, possibly in other regions of the world. Men like Karim don't stop. Laura warns in her speaking engagements. They evolve, they adapt, they find new ways to exploit human loneliness and desire for connection. The only defense is awareness and education. The case fundamentally changed how authorities approach international romance scams. What were once dismissed as simple financial frauds are now recognized as potentially lethal trafficking operations that can escalate to kidnapping and murder. Laura's story also highlighted the vulnerability of educated, professional women to sophisticated emotional manipulation. Her case studies are now taught in psychology courses, law enforcement training programs, and international relations curricula. The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that we're too smart to be fooled, Laura says. Intelligence is not immunity. Education is not armor. Love, or what we believe to be love, can blind even the most careful, analytical person. Her relationship status remains single by choice. I've learned to love myself in ways I never did before, she explains. I've learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely, and that desperation for connection makes us vulnerable to predators who sense that desperation like sharks sense blood in water. The women rescued partly due to Laura's evidence have all rebuilt their lives, though the trauma remains. Anna Lindquist returned to teaching and married a colleague who understood her experience. Others have chosen different paths, but all credit Laura with giving them the chance to choose their own futures. Romance scams continue to evolve and proliferate. The rise of artificial intelligence has made it even easier for criminals to create convincing fake identities and maintain conversations with multiple victims simultaneously. Dating apps and social media platforms have become hunting grounds for increasingly sophisticated predators. Laura's foundation now works with technology companies to develop better detection systems for identifying fake profiles and predatory behavior patterns. She also advocates for stronger legal frameworks that treat online romance fraud as the serious, violent crime it often becomes. My story is not unique, Laura concludes her speaking engagements. There are thousands of women around the world who have experienced similar ordeals. Some escaped, some were rescued, and too many did not survive. We owe it to all of them to remain vigilant, to speak openly about these dangers, and to never stop fighting against those who weaponize our human need for love. The investigation that began with Laura's escape continues to uncover new networks and rescue additional victims. Her courage in documenting evidence during her captivity and her decision to speak publicly about her experience have saved more lives than she will ever know. In a world where digital technology makes it easier than ever for predators to identify and target victims across international boundaries, Laura Koenig's story serves as both a warning and a beacon of hope. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we retain the power to fight back, to save ourselves, and to protect others from sharing our fate. The price of love should never be freedom, dignity, or life itself. Laura's survival and advocacy ensure that message reaches women around the world who might otherwise fall prey to predators disguised as princes, selling nightmares packaged as dreams.